For someone that recently seemed like was abandoned by most of his friends or drove away the rest of them, Ichigo sure has a way of ending up surrounded by more friends anyway, both new and old. So let's get into it. We've finally made it to the barren white dunes of Hueco Mundo, but before our trio of heroes even reach Aizen's castle, they come across something weird and unexpected and maybe wonderful. A little girl being chased by a gaggle of hollows. But as it turns out, this isn't a threat. This is just a very intense game of tag between a group of Arankars that consider themselves family. Even the little girl is actually an Arankar. This right here is one of the things I was really looking forward to and hoping for when we were coming to Hueco Mundo. We're getting different looks at hollows than what we've seen before in the series. And this is exactly what I wanted to see, an expansion on the hungry, spectral creatures that I love so much. We're not just getting villainous Arankars now, or more and more dangerous ones like the Espada. No, now we're seeing Arankars that aren't even enemies. At least, I hope they're not. So far, so good. I still have some trust issues now when it comes to Bleach, you know? That's all. It's nothing personal against Nell or any of these characters, but Aizen has permanently changed the way that I perceive things, for better or worse. Like, let's look at Nell, who so far is kind of a refreshing and wonderful addition to the series. Even her, she's a little sus. Adorable and funny, sure, but I'm not sure I entirely trust Nell. Like, there's something to be said about a child character being naturally disarming, so it's possible Kubo decided to create an Arankar child to make her seem more innocent. But there are plenty of creepy kids in stories that have seemed cute and sweet but turn out to be monsters. I hope that's not the case, because so far I really like Nell, and I love her family. They're hilarious, and it's sweet that they naturally formed into a unit like this. Found family stories always hit. They're always touching. Especially in a place like this, when this family is probably all that they have. But it's worth pointing out that Nell's family are a bit more hollowy than other Arankars we've seen so far, you know what I mean? Their masks are more intact, for one thing. Most Arankars we've met only have bits and pieces of their former masks, leading to all kinds of fun little accessories, but we've only seen a few with the majority of their masks left. D-Roy, that guy that Rukia killed that came with Grimmjow, he had a good portion of his mask still on the top of his head, for instance, but his face was still visible. And the Arankars whose masks were probably most intact were my anglerfish hamster and my plague doctor pterodactyl. But even they had their more human-like faces exposed more than that. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was mentioned during the fight with Demora and Iceringer that the weaker an Arankar is, the more they still resemble regular hollows. So maybe this is just a visual way of saying that Nell's family are weak. Maybe that's it. And I just kind of answered my own question, but I don't know. It all just worries me a little. How am I supposed to trust these guys if I can't see their eyes, if I don't know what they really look like? You know what I'm saying? I like them, and I want to trust them. I just don't know if I should, but I do like them. Bawa Bawa especially is a good boy. The best boy. But he's not an Arankar, right? He's gotta just be a hollow, because this dune sandworm looks nothing like any Arankars we've seen. But whatever the case, he's amazing, and I love him. And Nell's family in general injects some really good comic relief, making me have some actual laugh-out-loud moments while reading, whether it's when Ichigo makes them doubt that they're family at all, and quickly walks it back when they react, or when they realize that Ichigo and the others are outsiders, and are convinced that Ichigo being a Soul Reaper makes him like the devil, because of course that's how they'd see it. A Soul Reaper is like the boogeyman to hollows, I imagine. So it really seems like Nell is acting as a guide to Los Noches, but my gut is still giving me kinda Smeagol vibes, and I have to admit that I'm nervous that Nell can lead them into a trap. I'm still nervous about that possibility, even at the end of these chapters. I don't want Nell to be Gollum, but Nell might be Gollum. And it's on the way to Los Noches that we're confronted by Runuganga, who is essentially just a colossal hollow made of sand that is the guardian of this whole desert, apparently. And guys, this is pretty awesome. I love when Bleach has threats of this size sometimes, like the Menos Grande, where we're up against enemies that seem impossibly large. Having our heroes have to face like kaiju-sized threats really shows the scale of some of the threats in this universe, not limiting them by what we usually see in the living world. I particularly love this panel showing his size compared to Bawa Bawa. That really puts his height into perspective. This sand guy is a monolith. And I'm a sucker for sand powers. They're almost always cool and visually fun. Sandman is also my wife's favorite Spider-Man villain, and this guy certainly had that vibe, but Spidey never had a Zanpakuto. But we needed more than just Ichigo's sword to take him out. And thankfully a couple of friends brought theirs. It was actually a nice little surprise to see Rukia and Renji show up. Like, obviously I should have seen it coming, right? Considering they wouldn't just ditch Ichigo to save Orihime. At least Rukia wouldn't, but Renji's come a long way as his friend too, clearly, since he's here. And I just accepted that these two were on lockdown with the other Soul Reapers when they left, just like Ichigo did. But they obviously value his friendship over their positions and are willing to risk the consequences of the Soul Society to help him out. I love how they immediately planned to help him when they were taken away. They just played along until they could more conveniently slip away to assist him and didn't have like captain swords on their throats dragging them back to Soul Society. This brings up one of the things that Ichigo has been struggling with as a character lately, and that's trusting his friends, because he wants to do whatever he can to protect them. And it's not like he doesn't have good reason to want to do this, considering people he cares about keep getting imprisoned in alternate dimensions. He's got good reason to want to protect people, but it's really become a consistent struggle for him lately. For example, there's kind of a really beautiful symmetry to this scene when Rukia comes back, and when Tatsuki was demanding the truth from him a few chapters ago. Not only does Ichigo get smacked around by both, but they both also question him on his perception of them as friends. To be friends with someone, you need to trust them, you need to really respect them, and you don't push them away. But that's what he's been doing, and later Ichigo's desire to protect his friends is practically insulting to Rukia's capabilities, something that's very bluntly pointed out to him. His need to want to keep them safe comes from a good place, but in some ways, his decisions are negatively impacting his relationship with the people that he wants to protect. It's an interesting dilemma to give to a main character, whose very core has always been about protecting his loved ones. It's the Peter Parker problem. Figuring out how to use your power to protect people you care about from the truth and the threats of your double life, while simultaneously accidentally burning bridges and relationships. That's the second time I brought up Spidey in this video, and come to think of it, a teenage boy who's given great power and great responsibility, that protects his friendly neighborhood, who has a big enemy made of sand and a piece of possibly symbiotic clothing that can negatively affect his behavior and might be trying to take over his body, and an enemy with extra appendages springing out of them, and a master of illusion. Okay, I honestly just had to address this because one of you brought it up recently in a post when I compared Runaganga to Sandman, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. Because in some ways, Ichigo Kurosaki is absolutely Spider-Man, but in some ways he's also not. It's still just fun to think about the little similarities. Ichigo does have some of the tropes that make teenage superheroes fun to read just naturally baked into his character. But my favorite thing about Rukia and Renji showing up is that Byakuya apparently helped them sneak off to Wako Mundo. This is the same Byakuya that was such a stickler to the law and the rules back in the Soul Society arc. Now here he is, off panel, sure, but he's showing his growth as a character. I really loved that touch, especially since he was one of the captains that was ordered to help force the Soul Reapers to abandon Ichigo to begin with. It also just feels right that he didn't come along himself, but bent the rules just enough to help others do it. Baby steps toward having a mind of your own, Byakuya. Baby steps. So now we've got a really solid group making their way to Aizen's castle. And things are happening in the castle too. With how important Orihime is to this arc, it shouldn't be surprising at this point that I have some thoughts about where she's at in these chapters. She's got a new outfit reflecting her apparent servitude to Aizen, but I really liked the scene when Aizen shows her the Hogyaku, and she resigns herself to the idea that she's here for a purpose. and that's not to help Aizen. It's to use her abilities to destroy the Hogyaku. The Espada might underestimate her, but I have a feeling Aizen has more than accounted for Orihime trying to use her power against him. Like, he must know that this is a possibility, and knowing Aizen, he's got it figured out, I'm sure. But I still like that she has plans of her own and her own way of trying to stop him and protect her home. It's great stuff for her, but that's kind of par the course for this arc. So we finally arrive at Las Noches, and our gang splits up to hopefully cover more ground, but naturally, this just means they're going to be faced with individual obstacles to overcome and personal fights to win, and I can't wait. I really hope they can all fulfill the shared promise to come back alive, but I think they're about to be up against some real threats that could potentially take out some people. We'll see. But above all else, I just really appreciated how much of these chapters were little interesting explorations of the Arancars and the variety of them. You've got some that apparently aren't even part of Aizen's army at all, and you've got creatures like Bawa Bawa and Runaganga just being these colossal figures in the desert. Hueco Mundo, in a manner of speaking, is a living, breathing world with all kinds of residents. I just hope that we can trust our new friends as we venture into the heart of Aizen's fortress. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.